Welcome back. If you remember from last time, we were discussing the United States becoming involved in World War I. I'm Mr. Hovind, and I'm here with a true champion, Mr. Valancourt.
Over there, send the word over there. The Yanks are coming, the Yanks. All right, enough.
Wow, that was impressive.
So today, we're going to talk about weapons.
And the United States, when we got involved, we sent over our soldiers, and these soldiers were given the name Doughboy. Why were they given this name of Doughboy?
Yeah, because they went over there and their faces were a little bit on the chubbier side.
That's right. Keep in mind that the European soldiers who have been fighting for the last few months have been stuck in trenches, and it's been a stalemate. They haven't been getting proper food. They've been living under the elements, not much shelter, so their faces are gaunt, and they're filled with diseases.
So we're going to explore how World War I was different from other wars that we have studied in U.S. history by looking at advances in technology and different types of warfare. And these new technologies, these new weapons, will help gain World War I the nickname, the war to end all wars.
Now, when looking at this new weaponry and new warfare, new technology, all this new stuff, keep in mind that we've already touched on one of these new advancements, which was the German U-boat.
Unterseeboot.
This was what really caused the U.S. to become directly involved in the First World War because of this unrestricted submarine warfare, which led to instances like the sinking of the Lusitania and other.
Yeah, the Germans breaking their promise of saying, oh, we're going to stop this unrestricted submarine warfare with the Sussex Pledge, and then completely annihilating that, and we see the Lusitania blown up, and then Wilson keeps us out of war, but they'll continue to do it, and we end up being in it. But this was used as a technique to sort of help the Germans defeat the blockade, if you will, right, that the British had put on them. So, first new invention, the U-boat. But before we talk about all the other changes in technology, we want to explore the type of warfare that will really dominate the First World War, and that is trench warfare. That is a defensive type of warfare, and I'll let Mr. Hovind talk a little bit more about that.
Keep in mind, this is not a new type of warfare. It was used in the Civil War as well. But this type of warfare really leads to a defensive stalemate between opposing sides. The Germans and the French and the British and all of these individuals, once the trenches were really ingrained in the landscape, they never moved much, maybe 1 or 2 miles throughout the rest of the war.
No, it was all about conquering that no man's land in between the two sets of trenches.
Right, and typically, if we want to go quickly through what a day in the life of the trench would be like, it would be get up, shell the enemy, let them charge you, you shoot at them, they go back and hide in their little foxholes in their trenches, we get up, we go attack them, they shoot a few of us, we come back in, and we start the day all over again. A stalemate led to high casualties, and not many people, nothing was really gained from it.
No, so while the troops are in these trenches, you start to see problems such as lack of food, lack of nutrition. You're going to see rats, you're going to see standing water.
Rats the size of footballs.
Yeah, that's what the accounts all say. Standing water leads to problems such as trench foot.
Oh, yummy, yummy.
Oy.
In my tummy.
And this really will create a defensive war that is fought over very small amounts of land as they try to conquer this no man's land, the land in between the two sets of trenches.
And this fighting will forever change the landscape of Europe because of all the shelling and the different types of weaponry and warfare that was used. Everything that was in no man's land at one point was destroyed.
Such as the mines, too.
Right.
That every once in a while you'll hear on the news that a mine blew up that could be tracked back to World War I. That was probably in the middle of a no man's land.
And there's an area in France where they're still finding, like you said, unexploded mines. They're finding shells that have been shot that are buried about 2 feet deep, and when farmers are plowing, they're kicking up all these shells that never exploded.
Now we're going to focus on those technological developments of the time. And one of the things that will come about is barbed wire. Barbed wire, which we see used a lot with the trench warfare, right, Mr. Hovind?
Right, a lot of the times when you wanted to protect your trenches from enemies running across, you line them with barbed wire, so when they're trying to get to you, they might get hung up or caught in it.
You'd also see it in the no man's land, and it would be very deadly.
Anything to slow people down as they're making that charge across towards you in your trench.
Another new thing in World War I is grenades. And then, also, machine guns. See, these machine guns, though, in World War I were not very versatile. In fact, they needed about 4 to 6 men to work them and had to be on a flat surface. They had the firepower, though, of 100 guns.
That's crazy. And the final real advancement or new technology is a flamethrower. You want to clear out a trench? Get a flamethrower. You go down there, shoot that flame through the trench, everyone's going to be gone.
You also see large field guns or artillery guns. They had pretty long range on them and could deliver devastating blows to the enemy, but they needed about 12 men to work them, and they fired shells which would explode on impact. And Mr. Hoven was talking earlier to me before he started this about shrapnel shells that were found in World War.
And they're still finding them. In areas of France, they're finding these shrapnel shells that are unexploded. Farmers are turning them up as they plow their fields, and it's a hazard, because if these things explode, it can lead to a lot of damage. So with all of these new weapon advancements and warfare technology, probably the one that had the greatest impact on soldiers was the introduction of chemical warfare.
Yeah, and when we're talking about chemical warfare, we're really talking about gas. And there are 2 types of gas that really are used during World War I. The first is chlorine gas, introduced by the Germans in 1915, which will create a burning sensation in the throat and also chest pains. And it's very painful to die from because you're basically suffocating to death. The problem was the weather had to be just right with chlorine gas, because if the wind was blowing in the wrong direction, it could end up killing your own troops rather than the enemy.
Oh, that ain't good. That ain't good at all.
And the other type? Mustard gas.
Like the kind you put in the hot dog, right?
Nope, a little bit different. Mustard gas was colorless and would take up to 12 hours to take effect, but the effects were not very good. Blistering skin, vomiting, sore eyes, internal and external bleeding.
Oh, that sounds like fun.
Death from mustard gas could take up to 5 weeks.
Oh my gosh.
So along with chemical warfare such as gas, you also have what?
Gas masks. And this was the first war where gas masks were used widely by any group of soldiers to protect themselves from these dangerous gases that the enemy may try using on them.
There's lots of pictures of gas masks not only on soldiers, but on horses and dogs as well.
Correct.
Now we're going to start to see some changes in vehicles. I mean, we already talked about the U-boats, but now let's look at those vehicles on land, such as the tank.
Tanks.
And the first tank was known as Little Willie.
Willie.
It needed a crew of 3. Its maximum speed, get ready, 3 miles per hour.
Oh man, they're flying in that thing.
And it could not cross trenches.
Really? It couldn't cross trenches?
Nope. But the more modern day tank that would evolve by the end of the war would go up to 4 miles an hour.
Hey, that's awesome.
Huge improvement. Tanks were really predominantly used mostly by the British and the French. The Germans, not as much, and the Americans, I believe, had fewer than 20 tanks.
Less than 20 tanks at this point. All right, so let's change gears a little bit and look towards the sky and the new weapon advancements and military advancements, or military technology that occurred in the air, such as airplanes and zeppelins.
That's right. Airplanes were used in what will become known as dogfights. What are we referring to when we're talking about airplanes in World War I and the term dogfights?
Well, what we're talking about is the battles that would occur in the air between small planes with mounted machine guns on them.
And then also, along with airplanes, where you'll also see the Red Baron, if you will, come out from Germany, we will see Zeppelins. Zeppelins will be used for things like surveillance and dropping bombs during the First World War.
And one thing, I know I get this question a lot, and it's something I actually learned not too long ago. People ask, well, how did the airplanes that had the machine guns on them that would shoot through the propeller do that without actually shooting the plane down? And what actually it is that there was a little stop on the propeller that every time the bill of the propeller flew in front of the machine gun, it cuts it off. So the only shots that go through are the ones that are going through when the propeller is not in front of the gun itself.
I would have hated to be the guy shooting a machine gun before they realized that was a problem.
They used to actually try timing the propeller. Very efficient.
So these advances in technology and these new weapons and new ways of fighting with trench warfare will all mean a similar thing, and that is a large number of deaths due to military engagements.
And if you look at the graph, this shows dead in numbers by the thousands.
And you'll notice the United States has the lowest death rate there. Why is that?
Couple reasons, really. First, think about where the war was fought. It was fought in Europe. And second, the United States did not become involved in the Great War until 3 years after it began.
In 1917. You notice the Germans have such a high rate of deaths because most of the fighting took place in Germany. We'll see you next time, everybody.
That's a wrap. See you later.